Our mission story this week is a continuation of last week. So if you weren't here last week, I'm going to tell you really quick what happened last week so far. The story is from this book called Miracle on the Mountain by Bradley Booth. And last week we learned about a lady, an old lady who lived up in the mountains of an island called Java. And her name was Li Wa, and Li Wa was the only Christian in her whole village. She was also really old and had a hard time getting anywhere, but because she was a Christian, it didn't bother her that people laughed at her or that people said, the evil spirits are going to be angry at you. Li Wa wasn't worried. She lived a peaceful life now. She wasn't scared of the evil spirits or the witch doctor. And Li Wa even wanted to bring her tithe to Jesus. You remember what tithe is? She would take every 10 coins that she would collect, she would take one of them and set them aside to give to Jesus. And she wanted to take that tithe now to Jesus, and she knew the nearest place that she could do that was to the mission school in Surabaya, which was many days travel through the jungles. And she would do that every 6 months. She would travel, even though it would take her a whole day and a whole night and another whole day to get there to the mission compound. And when she would get there, she would give them her bag of coins, and then she would go back home, traveling a whole day and a whole night and a whole day through the dangerous jungle, traveling on her tired old feet just to be able to give her tithe to Jesus. And the people in the mission compound began to look forward to Li Wa showing up. Now, at the end of last week's story, the people had been waiting for Li Wa to come. They were thinking, oh, she'll be here soon because she comes every 6 months. That's coming soon, the day that she usually comes. And then, you know what? A big explosion happened. And if you don't remember, the mountain that Li Wa's village was on was a volcano. Would you like to live on a volcano?
No.
No, because a volcano can erupt. Just like on the picture in the front of this book here, lava can come out and there can be lots of destruction and your house can get burned down, and if you don't get out of the way, you could even die. Li Wa's village was on the side of a mountain that was a volcano, and it hadn't erupted in so long that everybody figured it never would anymore. But one day, while the missionaries had been waiting for Li Wa to travel down the mountain to Surabaya, where she would bring her tithe coins, the mountain blew up. The top of the mountain just started exploding with sulfur and smoke, and then fire as lava. That's melted rock. Lava is melted rock that comes out and starts flowing down the mountainside. And as that hot rock was flowing down the mountainside, it started boiling in the dirt. It started making the dirt catch on fire, and it would make the dirt turn into hot mud. Have you ever burned yourself with anything, like maybe some hot water or a hot... Yeah, or maybe a piece of hot metal or a hot pot. Hot mud sounds terrible because if you get mud on you, can you get mud off of your hand really easily if your hands get muddy? No, you can't really. I mean, you can kind of shake it and rub it, but that mud smears everywhere you touch it. Boy, I can't imagine getting burned with hot mud. But that hot mud was running down the sides of the mountain. They call that hot mud flow a special name. They call it a lahar. A lahar is mud that's so hot that it's just boiling and bubbling, and it destroys everything. It destroys the trees, it burns up buildings, it burns up rocks when it gets them. It's so hot that the rocks actually get burned up. Can you imagine how hot that is? So when the people in the Surabaya mission school heard the explosion and saw way off in the distance the mountain that Li Wa's village was on erupting with fire and seeing the smoke come out the top, they thought, everybody there is going to die. Oh, and that means Li Wa's going to die. Oh, how sad. And they all felt really sad. And then some people thought, well, maybe Li Wa will be okay. We'll know for sure if she shows up here at the mission compound. She usually comes every 6 months, and that's just a couple days away. We'll wait and see. And a couple days went by, and Li Wa didn't come. And then a few more days, and Li Wa still didn't come. And the people thought, well, maybe she'll come soon. Maybe it's taking her a little extra longer to get here. And a week went by, and she didn't come. And 2 weeks, and 3 weeks. But then you know what happened when a month went by? Somebody saw a little old lady walking towards Surabaya Mission School and said, that can't possibly be. It is. It's Li Wa. And there she came, little old Li Wa, tottering along with her pack on her back and with her little bag of copper coins. in her hand the tithe coins that she had been saving all that time. And when she started arriving to the Surabaya Mission School compound, oh, everyone came running. The word spread around, come and see, come and see. Li Wah is here. Somehow she survived the volcano. We must find out what happened. Everyone came and gathered around her. And Li Wah said, here's my tithe coins. I wanted to bring those again. It was a much harder trip this time. And everybody said, we don't want to hear about the trip. We want to hear, how did you survive the volcano? And then Li Wah told them what had happened. Li Wah had been in her village, one of many different little villages all along the side of the mountain. And she was in her village when she heard the usual little rumbling and a little smoke going up above the tree line. And everybody had thought, oh, it's just going to be another one of those little burps that a volcano does sometime. But then suddenly there had been the big explosion, and all the lava and the boiling mud, the lahar, had come flowing down the mountain. And all the people in the village ran. Well, all the people who could run, ran. So all the strong men, they ran. All the strong kids, they ran. All the strong women, they ran. The witch doctor, what do you think he did? He ran. Everybody ran as fast as they could to get away from the boiling mud lahar that was coming down the side of the mountain. But you know who couldn't run? Li Wah. Li Wah was old. She could barely walk. And there were other people in her village too who couldn't. People who had bad legs, people who were just really old, maybe their lungs didn't work well, their hearts didn't work so they couldn't run fast. There were people there whose heart and lungs were fine, but because they were maybe sick, they were too weak to get out of their beds to run. There were quite a few people there who couldn't leave the village, and they were scared. And do you know, a lot of those people who were scared and couldn't get away from the village were the very same people who had made fun of Li Wah and who had yelled at Li Wah because she was a Christian and wouldn't worship their idols, and because she wasn't afraid of the evil spirits anymore. They were the ones who had ignored her when they would see her and say, oh, that's that lady who worships an invisible God now instead of a nice statue like we have. They had been very mean and rude to her. Now they were scared as they saw the lahar coming down the mountain towards them too. And Li Wah, who was telling the story now in Surabaya, she said, I was scared too. I was standing in the middle of the street looking up the mountain, and I could just see, here came the boiling mud. It wasn't going as fast as water would go. Because if you can imagine pouring a cup of water out on the ground or a cup of mud on the ground, which one would pour out faster? Water would, right? The mud doesn't go quite as fast as water does, but it does go. And it was coming along and nothing could stop it. And she watched and she saw that it was just knocking down trees and going right over the biggest boulders. And it was hitting other villages up the hill, further up, closer towards the top of the volcano. And she knew her village was right in the path. It was going to get burned up. And there was no way she could run away. She wasn't strong enough. She wasn't fast enough. And everyone was gathered out in the street now looking. And the only person who was not screaming was Li Wah. Because Li Wah said later in Surabaya, I was scared, but then I thought, my God shall supply all my need. That's the same verse she would say to herself over and over when she'd be doing things in her village, like people being mean to her, or people not wanting to be her friend. She would say, my God shall supply all my need. Or when she was traveling through the jungle to take her tithe to the Surabaya Mission School, and she was traveling all day and all night and all day, she would say, my God shall supply all my need. Li Wah had faith that God was her shield and her protector. And now as she looked at that boiling, burning mud flow coming towards her, it filled her with peace inside to think, my God shall supply all my need. In fact, Li Wah realized, God is the only one who can supply my need. There's nobody who's going to come and scoop me up in their arms and run down the mountain with me. There's no helicopter to come and save me. This was before helicopters. This took place in the year 1919. There's nobody who's going to come showing up and rescue me by building a big wall that'll keep the boiling mud lahar out. Nobody can rescue me except God. And so Li Wah felt peaceful. She thought, it'll be up to God to save me. And the people around her who were screaming, they looked at her and they realized, Li Wah's being different again. We're all screaming. We're all trying to look for a way out of here. We're all just saying, help, help, help. And Li Wah's not. And for the first time, they were glad that Li Wah was different. Instead of laughing at Li Wah, they came running up to Li Wah. Instead of ignoring Li Wah, they talked to Li Wah and they said to Li Wah, Li Wah, Li Wah, We need help. Pray to your God. Maybe your God can save us. We can't be saved. Their gods, their idols were made out of stone and out of wood. And they were looking up the mountain now and seeing this boiling mud lahar, burning down whole trees, which are made of wood, burning up whole boulders, which are made of stone. And they realized, our idols aren't strong at all. They're made out of the stuff that the lahar is burning up right now. So now they were asking Liwa, help Liwa, pray to your God. And Liwa knelt down right there in the street, facing up the mountain, and she prayed. And she said, dear God, only you can save us now. You are our shield and protector. You will supply all our needs. We trust you, amen. And Liwa opened her eyes, and she watched as the boiling mud flow came through the trees at the edge of the village, came right up to the edge of the village, and then it did something that nobody had ever seen before and nobody ever thought could happen. That boiling mud flow, like a big tidal wave coming down the mountain, split. It was coming down like a big wall, and as it reached the village, part of it split and started going this way. Part of it split and started going this way, and it went around the village. And the people just watched with their eyes wide as it went around the village until, once it was past the village, it joined back together. And it kept on going down the mountainside. And the people looked to the left and to the right, and there was just boiling mud everywhere. And as the mud would start to stay behind and kind of stop moving, it would cool off. And eventually you could walk on it. It wouldn't stay hot forever. But it would be like having a new pavement put down. It would be like having a new driveway everywhere, except it was rocky and hard and bumpy. And as they looked left and right, that's what was all around their village. All the trees were gone now. All of the big rocks that had been around there were gone now. It was just lahar, dry lahar all around them. But their village was safe. Their houses hadn't burned down. They hadn't died. They couldn't believe it. And they all realized there was only one reason that their village had not burned to the ground. What do you think that reason was? What was the reason their village had not burned to the ground?
Because they prayed.
Because they prayed? Who was in charge of that? It was God, wasn't it? The God of heaven had protected them from the lahar when Liwa, his servant, had prayed. And now Liwa finished telling her story in Surabaya, and she said to them, that's why it took me longer to get down here. I knew I still needed to come and bring my tithe, but it was a lot harder to travel when everything was rocky, hard, bumpy, dry lahar. It was hard on my feet. I got lots of little cuts, but I had to come and bring my tithe. And all the people listening to the story, their eyes were just filled with tears, but they had smiles on their faces too, because they realized God was so powerful. Not only could God protect a village from a flowing mud wall tidal wave, but God could also change someone like Liwa, that he could give her so much love inside her heart that she would want to do anything for God, even walking long distances and getting cuts on her feet to bring her tithe to God. That's how powerful God is. And God had given Liwa faith, enough faith for the whole village, so that even when the other people who didn't even know who God was and who had laughed about God before, when they asked for help, Liwa had enough faith for them too. Isn't that wonderful? I am so glad that God does those kinds of miracles for us. You and I will probably never, ever, ever see a boiling mud wall coming down a mountainside towards us. But there's lots of other things that we worry about. You might not get up in the morning and go, I'm worried that mud is going to flow over my house. But you might worry about, I'm worried that my mom and dad were fighting today. I'm worried that somebody at school is being mean to me. I'm worried that I've been feeling sick. I'm worried that, and worry likes to flood over us like a tidal wave. But do you know, when you peacefully pray to God and say, dear God, you are my shield and protector. You will supply all my needs. You'll take care of me. Then you know what happens to that big worry wall that comes down at you? It splits and it goes away. It goes around you because God has His protection on you, and He protects your heart from being worried, and He protects you in life from the things that are worrying you too. So don't forget the story of Liwa and the lahar that split around her village, that miracle on the mountain. Should we pray? Thank you, dear God, that you have worked miracles so many times before, not just in the Bible times, but even in other times of our history. Help us to remember those wonderful stories, because then it reminds us again that you are strong enough to help us now too. We love you. Amen.